Hello everyone and welcome to Medicated Housewife DIY, where crafting and mental health come together. My name is Sarah. In today's DIY video, we are making tabletop Christmas trees from Dollar Tree and other supplies. They are festive and fun, high-end looking Christmas craft decor that you're gonna love, so stick around. And let's go make some stuff and jump right into this. For our first DIY tabletop Christmas tree, I am using a white foam cone that I bought on Amazon, and I'll link it in the description, but Dollar Tree does sell a very similar cone to this one. However, my store had none, so I ordered a 6-pack of these cones on Amazon. This tree starts off pretty simply. We're going to wrap the entire cone in jute rope. The jute that I'm using, I already had it in my stash, but Dollar Tree does carry jute as well. I'm going to use Gorilla Glue, hot glue to attach the jute rope, and I'm trying to only apply the glue once every circle around the cone so that I don't end up with a big gluey mess. And anyone that's made any of those rope circular trays knows what a mess this rope can get when you use a lot of glue. And if you don't know, then just take my word for it. This cone doesn't need a ton of glue to attach to the rope because it's being wrapped around it. Just to let you know, this video is part of the Heidi Sonboul DIY Christmas Challenge, hosted by Heidi Sonboul DIY Channel. Heidi is an awesome crafter, and I have been a fan for a while now, so I am so excited to be part of this challenge with her and so many other super talented creators. There will be a link to Heidi's channel in the description box below, as well as a link for the challenge playlist featuring all those other talented creators, so be sure to go check out Heidi and the playlist after this video. You may just discover some new channels you never saw before, so be sure to check them out. So the rope on my cone is dry, and I am taking macrame rope, which you can find on Amazon. I'll link the one I used below. I'm measuring out the width around the top of the cone, and I cut a piece of the macrame cord that I'm going to use to tie around the top of the cone. And then I used the cord to measure out the height of the cone. And I proceeded to add a total of 8 cone lengths to that before cutting it. I want to make a note here that you really don't need 8 of the cone lengths of cord here. You could easily get away with doing 6 lengths of cord. I realized that later. So now I cut that piece and I use that to measure out 8 more pieces of that same length of 8 lengths of cone. It's not as complicated as I made that sound. Just look at what I'm doing here. I just make 8 more pieces of long cord. That's 8 lengths of the cone. I'm going to fold each of these 8 long pieces that we cut in half, and we are going to tie them folded over to the smaller piece for the top of the cone that we cut at the beginning. We tie those 8 pieces of cord doubled using a simple lark's knot, which is a very basic macrame knot. The long cord is folded in half, and you put the loop over the short rope, and you pull your 2 bottom pieces under and through the loop, and then straighten out and neaten up the knot. We do that with all 8 of the long pieces of macrame cord, like you can see me doing here. Now, let me just preface this macrame project with this. I am not a macrame expert. I dabble. I know a couple of knots, and that's about it. I may use incorrect terminology or maybe even tie the knots incorrectly. So please, 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 if you are a macrame expert out there, take no offense if I'm either butchering the language or the art. I apologize, and I don't want to insult you. I feel like the National Macrame Council, or maybe it's the Macrame Mafia, is going to come and get me or something. I'm sorry. I'm just a woman that likes a little macrame in her projects. You guys, if you're an expert, I'm not worthy. But seriously, feel free to leave me a comment down below if you'd like to educate me on macrame etiquette. I am always willing to learn. And if you're the Macrame Mafia, please don't hurt me. I'm joking. I'm sure that if they love macrame, they are very peaceful people, right? Right. Moving on. Now, in looking at my jute covered cone and my macrame cord, I felt like they were just a little too close in color. So I had some leftover coffee stain that I had used on my Jenga blocks earlier. And what I did was I painted the coffee straight onto the jute covered cone, just to darken up the rope color and to make it a little richer, a little deeper, and a better contrast for my macrame cord. After the coffee stain dried, I liked the nice brown color of the cone, and I took that short piece of macrame cord, the one with all 8 of the longer pieces tied onto it, and I tied that around the very top of the cone. I just made a regular double knot so that it fit snugly around the cone top, and I evened out all 8 of the long pieces that were tied onto it, making them as evenly spaced out as I could around the cone. After I made the double knot, I trimmed off the excess cord on that short piece, and I just used a dab of hot glue to reinforce the double knot and to keep that in place. So taking 2 of the 8 doubled pieces of cord, that gives me 4 individual pieces of macrame cord. And we're going to be making square knots, which is another basic macrame knot. We push the 2 sets of cords together, and the 2 single pieces in the middle stay in the middle. And I start with a single piece to my right and make a loop draped over the 2 middle pieces. And then I take a single piece to my left, and it goes under the 2 middle pieces and up through the loop that I made on the right. And then I tighten that up, leaving about a 1/2 inch gap from the top where we started. And that's the first part of our knot. Then we complete that knot by reversing what we just did and making a loop with the cord on my left side draped over the 2 middle pieces of cord. And I take the piece on my right side and I put it under the 2 middle pieces and up through the loop on my left and tighten that up to where the first part of our knot is. And that is our first completed square knot. Now you're going to turn the cone and go to your right to the next 4 pieces of cord and repeat the same thing, repeating that knot on all the rest of the long pieces of rope until we get back to where we started. So with our first full row of square knots completed, we start our second row of square knots. Now this row joins one section to the next, and what I mean by that is we take 2 single pieces on my right side from one group of 4 and take another 2 single pieces from one group on my left side and pull them together to make our new group of 4 pieces. So we start again with our 2 middle pieces staying in the middle, and the single piece to my right makes a loop draped over the 2 middle pieces, and the single piece on my left goes under the 2 middle pieces and up through the loop on my right, pulling the knot up to about a little less than an inch below where the first row of square knots are. So to complete my first knot, I do the reverse move by making a loop with the single piece on my left draped over the 2 middle pieces, and taking the piece on my right and going under the 2 middle pieces and up through the loop on the left. Then tightening that up to where the first part of the knot is, and that is our first completed square knot of our second row. Now we repeat this maneuver, moving it to our right and taking the remaining 2 single pieces of cord and combining them with the first 2 pieces of the next group, thus making our new group of 4. And we begin another square knot with our 2 middle pieces staying in the middle, and our single piece on the right makes a loop draped over the 2 middle pieces. The single piece on the left goes under the middle pieces and up through the loop, tightening it to where the square knot that you just made was. You then complete that knot with the reverse move with a loop on the left and the right side cord going under the 2 middle pieces and up through the loop. I'm going to continue this all the way around the cone until I get back to where I started, and that's when I start my third row of knots, exactly the same way I did my second. You continue that cycle for however many rows you want to do. And I stopped at 7 rows of square knots, but you can do less if you like that look. I had a couple of half wood beads as well as some assorted size wood beads in my stash, and I got a small bag of assorted sized wood stars to use as tree toppers. Got them on Amazon, and I'll link them below in the description. I took all of them and I dropped them into my coffee stain until they got a nice brown color, and I took them out to dry. I did keep a couple of the beads and the half beads a natural color so that I could have a little bit of contrast. As you get toward the bottom of the tree, it gets easier to do the square knots, as you can see here. I also just really love the way the diamond pattern that forms when you make the square knots this way. When you get to the end of the knots, you trim the leftover macrame cord on the bottom, but you do want to leave enough cord for you to be able to comb it out and fray it a little later when we get to the very end. At this point, I used some hot glue to glue the half beads in a random pattern inside the middle of the diamond shapes that are formed by the macrame. I alternated stained and unstained half beads for contrast, sort of like the ornaments on a Christmas tree. At the bottom of the tree, I used a simple double knot to attach my loose hanging cords to each other. I also used the cord trimmings from the rest of the tree and randomly tied some of them using a lark's head knot onto the bottom cords to make a little bit more fringe and some visual interest on the bottom of the tree. I used a comb to fray the bottom edges and also randomly strung some wood beads, some stained, some unstained, onto some of the hanging strings that were not fringed. The bottom of this tree has no rules. I say hang what you want off of it, fringe it more, fringe it less, no rules. Do what makes you happy when you look at it. And this is how the first of my tabletop Christmas trees turned out. I love this macrame tree. It has such a sunny, natural boho vibe. It's awesome. I love everything about it. While this tree definitely took the longest to make, it was a labor of love and so worth it. If you have someone in your life that loves that neutral, earthy kind of boho look, they will love this tree. I really just can't get enough of it. Let me know in the comments how you feel about it. For my second DIY tabletop Christmas tree, I'm using another white foam cone, and I'm going to give it a generous coat of this brown acrylic paint from the Dollar Tree, just to make sure no white can be seen on the tree. Okay, so I am using my coffee stained Dollar Tree tumbling tower blocks. I'm using Gorilla Glue hot glue and gluing down the blocks vertically along the bottom of the cone on an angle so that they kind of look like a flared skirt or something. Like, that's the best way to describe it, I think. I glue them all around the entire bottom, putting it down every once in a while to make sure that it still stands up straight without any issue. After the first row is done, I move on to the second, and I'm gluing each block still vertically, spaced in between the two blocks below it, and still at a slight angle, jutting out a little bit. I then move on to the third row, still placing the blocks in between the blocks beneath, and still on a slight flared out angle. I will keep doing this for each additional row, although some rows are increasingly difficult to place the blocks between the blocks beneath it because as we get higher up, there are less and less blocks in each row. Now, I apologize, you guys, but I don't know what happened here. This whole clip was filmed completely out of focus. I'll try to get through this as quickly as possible, but basically, this is me continuing the rows going up to the top of the tree. I did 10 rows up to the top and used 4 blocks at the very top, glued vertically to form a slight point at the very top of the tree. I also used a small wood cube from the Dollar Tree at the very top of my tree, and I rested the wood star on top of it as my tree topper. And this is how the second of my tabletop Christmas trees turned out. I think this is a really cute little Jenga block tree. It's not perfect and it has some flaws in certain areas, but I think that's part of its charm. I made a quick little garland out of wood beads and a couple of little green pearls I had in my stash, and that red berry wire garland from Dollar Tree. I twisted a little LED string light in there and boom, I had my neutral decor wood garland, which I think completes the tree really nicely. I think this would be adorable on a mantle or on a holiday table. Plus, it was a very quick and easy project to complete. Let me know what you think. For my third DIY tabletop Christmas tree, I'm using one of those translucent cutting mats from the kitchen section of Dollar Tree, and I'm rolling it around one of my white foam cones to make it into a cone shape. I use a couple of dabs of hot glue at the beginning to attach it to itself, and a little more at the end to close up the cutting mat cone. I won't be leaving the foam cone in there for the finished project, but I am leaving it in while I make the project to give the cutting mat some good support. I trim the bottom of the mat with a scissors to make it flat and able to stand up on its own. The second item for this tree that we're using are these clear plastic jewels. And frankly, I've had this huge bag of these going on like 10 years. I used to use them as filler for vases or centerpieces. And to be honest, I saw someone else make this tabletop tree using these exact jewels. And I thought, oh my gosh, I have those. I have to make one of these. So full disclosure, this is not my idea. Offhand, I can't remember where I saw it, but if I can figure it out, I will link the original tutorial that I saw for it below. But whoever that was, thank you. Thank you for giving me such a great project to finally use these plastic jewels. Now, if you don't have jewels like these, I'm pretty certain you can use any of the clear glass pieces and the vase fillers that they have at Dollar Tree or Hobby Lobby and a bunch of other places. And all we're going to do for this tree is use hot glue to attach these clear plastic jewels all around the entire rolled cutting mat. This really can't get any simpler. So you want to space them out in a way that looks good to you. And you may want to separate a couple of the smaller jewels to the side and use those once you get up to the tapered section at the top of the tree. But other than that, this is all gluing. It's very straightforward. I wanted to use a metal star for the tree topper, but I didn't have one, so I grabbed one of the wood stars that I had and some silver metallic contact paper that I also had, and I just covered the wood with the contact paper. It was super easy. I then hot glued the star to a toothpick and slid the toothpick down into the hole at the top of the tree. Also really easy. The tutorial that I saw used some mini LED string lights inside the tree to light it. I decided to put the tree on a pedestal, which was just a white Dollar Tree candle holder. And I used one of those little round battery operated push lights underneath it, like inside, from the Dollar Tree, inside the tree to light it up. And this is how the third of my DIY tabletop Christmas trees turned out. The way this tree lights up is amazing. The pictures aren't really doing it justice. The light is bright and icy. Seriously, winter wonderland looking and so easy to do. Anyone can do this, and the results are very high-end and sophisticated. I'd like this on a holiday table or maybe even a windowsill. Just gorgeous. Thank you for watching this Medicated Housewife DIY video, and if you enjoyed it, please hit the like and subscribe buttons. Until next time, I'm the Medicated Housewife, and crafting is my medication.